Welcome to the 1 Minute Apologist. We interview the world's leading apologists to provide credible answers to curious questions.
In the book of Genesis, we know that Adam heard, in the day you eat of this, you shall surely die. Speaking of the fruit that hung on the tree. Yet when both him and his bride Eve capitulated to the serpent, they didn't seem to die. What do you think is going on there?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's a misunderstanding of what that Hebrew idiom "on the day" means. Even Answers in Genesis, which is no friend of my view, but I'm a young earth creationist, and so I'm a big fan of that ministry. Even they have an article on the website where they explain that the Hebrew idiom "bayom," on the day, it's a way of saying when. Imagine if I said to you, when you eat too much, you'll get fat. I'm not saying the moment that you eat too much, you're going to suddenly balloon. It means that if you consistently do that, eventually you're going to get fat. Or if I said, when you break the law, you're going to jail. I don't mean you're going to go to jail that second. I mean, once you're caught having done it, then you'll go to jail. Well, in the same way, what God is warning is that when you eat from the tree from which I've forbidden you to eat, you will surely die. You will fall under the sentence of death, and that will eventually be carried out. And the reason we know that that's what was meant is because after they eat from the fruit, and God pronounces the curse upon Satan and upon Eve and upon Adam and upon creation, what does he say? He says, to dust you shall return. And then a few verses later in chapter 3, he kicks Adam and Eve out of the garden, and he blocks access to the tree of life using this whirling sword so they can't get to the tree of life, lest they eat and live forever. So by kicking Adam and Eve out from the garden and no longer granting them access to the tree of life, it ensured that they would eventually die. That's sure enough what happened. And what's really fascinating about that is I've often said that conditionalism can literally be found from cover to cover in Scripture, because we've been talking about the front cover of the Bible in the book of Genesis. On the other cover in the book of Revelation, the tree of life reappears, but only the saved have access to that tree of life, which seems by all accounts to indicate that only the saved are going to be able to live forever the way that Adam and Eve would have if they'd continued to be given access to the tree of life. The implication being, if the wicked don't have access to that tree of life, they're going to die just like Adam and Eve eventually did.
So for those who would say, hey, it's a spiritual death that took place, and it was also ultimately going to be a physical death, would you as well see a spiritual death?
Spiritual death is not language that Scripture uses. There are places you were dead in your transgressions and similar ones. Whether those are using the language of life and death metaphorically, whether they're using prolepsis, which it's sort of like when somebody's being marched down the Green Mile to the electric chair, you'll say, dead man walking. Well, he's not literally dead, but he's sure to die, right? Whether we're talking prolepsis or metaphor or some sort of spiritual death, either way, the death also included physical death. And if the wages of sin include both physical death and spiritual death, then the final punishment must also be physical death, at least in addition to spiritual death, whether or not spiritual death is something that Scripture teaches at all.